Well, once again, good morning. My name is Jack Fitzgerald. I'm the ETA Graduate Club President at the Weatherhead School of Management, a current MBA student. This is the Debt Financing Essentials session, and I would like to briefly introduce, briefly introduce our panelists today. Kylie Smith is the SVP team leader at CF Bank, a Weatherhead School alumnus, and CF is a 3-year sponsor of this event. We wouldn't be able to do this without our sponsors, guys. That's a round of applause. Absolutely. John Coco is the CEO and owner of Fedal Automation and Linden Polyurethane, a serial ETA entrepreneur. Welcome, John. And then Michael Fox is the founder of Zorro Capital and another serial ETA entrepreneur. Let's welcome our panelists.
Well, thank you. Kylie texted me yesterday. She goes, "You better get on LinkedIn and do some social media stuff so people would come." And I didn't, so thank you for coming. So we're going to start off with a video, guys. All right. So no one told us what to do here, so we're going to try to entertain you guys a little bit and then kind of educate you if we can. But we love, love, love this video.
This is coming from a place of wanting to start fresh and clean. I love this place. I love this city. I want to start our first business here. I want it to be a real business, an honest business with honest partners.
We want to do high-level dining and hospitality and beverages and we will, because we know that any good restaurant starts with dedication to service and taking care of people.
We drafted a quick term sheet that specifically lays out not only our business perspectives, but an execution guide as well as a return portfolio.
Richard, will you turn that fucking thing off, please? What's going on? What are you doing? Mike, he was telling you the truth. About the patents? What? No, about franchising. You wanted to franchise this place. You wanted to open a restaurant with me. How did you know? Because we found your money.
Well, the banker didn't put it in the bank, did he?
No, he definitely didn't put it in the bank.
Thank Christ.
What is KBO?
Kalinowski, me. There's out of you. Lane.
Lee. Who's Lee?
Uncle Lee Lane.
That's not our uncle.
Richie's better cousin.
Hey, Richie, could you please turn that
Thing off. It's making me insane. How's it not making you insane? I don't mind it. Lucky you.
Come on in, Uncle Jay. How did I know that the crawl space had an alarm on it? Kevin McAllister. Yes, hello. The password is Go Fast Boats Mojito, all one word. Yeah, Go Fast Boats and then Mojito, all one word.
Okay, so just to be clear, that again, hear correctly, not only are you not giving me back the original $300,000 you owe me, but you are also asking me for an additional $500,000.
Yes, that sounds correct.
And so, how many times have you done this for me?
None times.
And what's your track record, Sid?
Great.
Cool, I'm in.
So if you guys haven't seen this series, The Bear, and either you're a business owner or want to be a business owner, you got to watch this, because I feel like I live this show almost every day. And Cuz, the guy that had the Mojito password, I think I have that guy that works for me. So, we're gonna talk a little bit about financing and how to get money if you don't have cousin Vinny up there to help you out. And so we're going to spend a little bit of time to do that, but we feel like one of the more important questions of people that are either going through the process or wanting to go through the process of buying a company, the question that I faced, and I know Michael faced, is how much money do we need, right? I mean, so what do we need to ask a banker for? And how do I finance this deal? So there's a lot of ways to answer that question, but for me, and I know Michael, that was like a really important first step in understanding if I'm going to go broke or if I'm going to need to ask Uncle Vinny to get a loan, or do I have a banker that's going to support us, or if there's creative ways to kind of finance the deal. And so as a starting point, this is a question that everyone should be asking. We're going to try to answer that question in different ways through our different stories.
So, excellent. The last time I gave a presentation, my mic didn't work, so this is awesome. So we're going to go about this by telling our story 3 different ways, which I think is very important, and I want to give a little anecdote to explain why I think you need to look at things different ways. I break the system a little bit here because we've been telling everybody, here is the process that you follow. I intentionally parked over on Adelbert because I went to undergrad here, and one of my favorite games that I used to play with myself when I was an undergrad is walking up to Adelbert and Euclid, waiting with the mobs of students to cross the street, and at a moment that didn't make sense to cross the street, I would take one step and then step backwards and watch all the people go. And so I wanted to do that again. I wanted to see if the kids had learned anything in the last 20 years, and they haven't. So my point is, you don't want to just be lemmings in every situation. When we're looking at small businesses, every scenario is different. So there are ways that you can go about finding financing that we can guide you towards, but we're really just putting guardrails around the situation. Every single business that we look at requires a unique perspective and requires a unique lender. And what you need is to have a lender that can be flexible with you. So we're going to go through this, tell you a couple of different ways that we've gone about it.
So first of all, John is here because he's our media guy. So thank him for the presentation. It's phenomenal. And he even put notes on who to speak when. And we didn't even read it until we came up to the podium. So I'm Kylie Smith. I work at CF Bank, and I'm very passionate about this subject. I went to CASE. I had Gorilla, which is Richard Osborne, that was the genesis on ETA, with Scott. I think we even probably were in one of the classes. So whole family are entrepreneurs, grew up an entrepreneur. Osborne, and we can go to our next slide. Osborne had this thing he taught, you need to be passionate about what you're doing. Because when you step into the ETA shoes, you're all in. And it's scary some days, it's happy some days, sometimes you're probably crying, and the other days you're throwing a book at someone. So he said to all the people in the class, he's like, do 100 points on why ETA means something to you and why you want to become an entrepreneur. I stopped at 40. I couldn't do any more, so that's why you have me as an entrepreneurial banker. I couldn't give it all up, but I had to. I'm not an owner like these two guys. So I came up with this acronym, and I know it's not your typical banking thing, but Michael and John said, really, why do you engage certain entrepreneurs and why do you bank them? Because there are so many out there, and there's not a time in the day to actually finance them all. So this acronym is important. Passionate is the Osborne thing. 100 steps, you gotta really be in it. Structured is the next step. When you go into this, you better be ready. You better understand kind of what you have, what equity approach you wanna go in, what type of size you wanna go in, what type of industry you want to go in, and how you're going to go about it. Structure, if you don't come with structure, I kind of think, oh my gosh, maybe you need to go back at it and come back again. And then prepared. 30% of my time with Brad, my bank president, who's here, is he in this room or did he skip out on me? Oh, I never skip out. Okay, there he is. I spend on coaching people in ETA. I know that 30% will never be buying, but we do a lot of learning together. And what do we learn? Anybody who's going to tell me what the first thing I do? There's some of you in here. Larry, what do we do together? Come on. The first thing we do.
Well, I know that you're an excellent networker, and so you certainly connect. You've connected me with a lot of different people, and then you and I have sat down and chatted about the type of business that I might be looking at buying, and then we talked about some of the deal characteristics of that business. Definitely the cash flow. Yes. Cash flow is a no-brainer. Yes.
That is, all that other stuff is true, but cash flow is king, right? So when you're going into a company and you don't understand your cash flow, just forget about it. That's the video up there, actually. I didn't think about that. Good job, John. And so understanding how it makes money, understanding how it's going to debt finance it, and that is the most important, and then understanding how to look at a company. If you can't write the own sim that you're looking at, then you are not understanding what you're looking at. So every company, you should be able to figure out how to pick it apart. And you want to know the three most important things: cash flow, Brad's favorite hockey stick up to the right in sales. If it dips anywhere near the last 3 years, you got to have a darn good reason. And then concentration. Concentration kills. So somebody did come up and goes, "What do you think about 65% concentration, Kylie?" to me today. I'm like, oh, seller note, 100%. So those are the three things. What's very unique about this, I did get to kind of pick people that came up here, and they'll tell their stories, but there's a story that didn't get to come up to actually hear. And so there's different ways to finance. These two guys finance differently. There's somebody that did a sponsored finance. So he raised enough money to fund his life and got a great backing around him. So Erin, my sister's here, and she's gonna time him. He gets like 3 of my minutes, so I'm gonna give it to Nate. And Nate, you wanna come and just kind of give your little, sure. Yeah, I think this one's important to add.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Kylie. So maybe just a little bit about my journey. I did raise a traditional search fund, a sponsored search fund, so I had investors backing me from the start, which definitely affected the types of companies that I could look at, the size of companies, some of the growth expectations around that type of deal based on the investor expectations and the structure I had going in. And with that, then looking at each individual deal also affected how I wanted to structure that deal and how, what types of debt financing made sense. And I know Michael already made the point about how important it is to take a flexible look at each deal and what makes sense versus a one-size-fits-all. So I definitely experienced that in my own time searching. I had 2 main deals under LOI. One that got very close to closing and did not, and then one that did. Both of those had very different structures. The first one was a much smaller deal. It also had a dynamic with the business where there was concern about downside risk was a dynamic, a common factor with a lot of small businesses, right? And with my structure and having the investors, one thing I benefited from was a great team of advisors and people to bounce ideas off of. Kylie was also part of that support structure and was very helpful. But in getting that feedback from investors, one aspect that came up was this downside risk. And hey, this is a great business. It has a lot of upsides, but we're worried about this. And my question was, well, is that a deal killer, or is that something we could address through structure? And got some feedback of some ways, some creative ideas for how to address that. And we ended up doing a relatively larger seller note, and also an aspect where that seller note could be forgivable. That is, it could be partially or totally forgiven, kind of on a sliding scale based on a known risk factor that was identified in the business. So that was a way to, thank you, to kind of alleviate some of those concerns that were there and help put together a structure that could be comfortable for the investors and then also for lenders. The other business, very different characteristics. It was larger. It didn't have the immediate concerns about downside. It had a lot of underlying stability, but it was much more about, hey, this business is really growing fast. It's on a great trajectory, and how do I distinguish myself in terms of having a competitive offer to someone who really has some other pretty good options? And in that case, it was more about listening to the seller and what he was really interested in. And in his case, it was more about some of his key team members and how to make them involved in sharing the benefits of that sale. So Is that anything else? Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So Nate had the ability to have a team around him, which gave him support, and it was an expert team. One of them presented, I think, here today. Yeah, so he was able to go after a little bitty one, which I looked at, and then he went after a huge one, which I could not do, but we still work together. So no, but it was fun. So that's one example. Now I get to get rid of the mic, which I'm so excited, and you two can go.
Yes. Unlike Kylie, I like talking into the microphone, so John's going to have to steal it from me. So my story, so I'll back up and tell you a little story. So I worked in a variety of industries. Worked for a manufacturing company in Streetsboro that went through a couple of iterations of trying to sell to private equity. And I was involved in kind of the background of looking at that. Realized that I was a 35-year-old kid at the time and was not going to be around after a private equity transaction happened in this large $200+ million business. So I went out on my own, completely naive, without having any network, without knowing that Promise Partners existed, to buy a business. And I believe that my naivete is the reason that I succeeded, because I didn't know that I was likely to fail. So I looked at a couple businesses. Couldn't figure out how to make the financing work because I really didn't have any money. I had pulled some money out of my house and a home equity line of credit, and got through diligence on, started diligence on a couple of deals. Got all the way to the day of closing on a engineering services business. Spent $30,000 in diligence, and the seller decided not to sell to anyone the day that we were supposed to sign the closing papers. That story, I will tell you, is a very formative thing for me, because I almost had a nervous breakdown. I didn't talk to anyone for a good 45 days because I thought, I've got 3 little kids and a mortgage and no money and no job, and I don't know what I've just done. So I met Kylie and another, a bunch of people that are all around here. You guys are surrounded by amazing people in this group. And found a business in Solon that was way outside of my price range. And that's when I had this epiphany that instead of bidding against all the people that I had been bidding against, I would ask one of those people that was sitting in the old Starbucks by Corky and Lenny's, and that doesn't exist there anymore. So I'm sitting there having a meeting with a broker, and one of my future partners was sitting next to me. We overheard each other talking and decided that we would buy something together. So we did end up buying a distribution company in Solon, ran it, crashed during COVID, grew, and then ended up selling it in 2022 to Blue Point Capital. The part of the story that I want you guys to hear is that I was going through a traditional process with an investment banking company, EdgePoint Capital, and they were doing a wonderful job at increasing the price of the business. It was a great business, no concentration, had different avenues of sales avenues, revenue channels, great team, all the things, but it was very expensive. So we were doing an SBA loan, but what happened was we ran out of room in the SBA loan, maxed out $5 million, that's all you can do. And I was trying to do a deal that was around $13 million. I didn't have it. So how do we do this? What a lot of people don't realize that Kylie knows is that you can do additional types of lending. You can add mezzanine lending. There's sub-debt options. Investors can participate at different levels than they would normally participate in. What I did was add a large chunk of preferred equity into my deal with a preferred rate of return, and it basically acted like what ended up being a third level of debt. So we had a senior, and then we had a mezzanine group, which was Tecum Capital, by the way. If there's anyone from Tecum, thank you for changing my life. And some absolutely amazing partners that taught me that good partners are really essential to being able to grow and succeed doing this. Next slide. Oh, look at you. He's ahead of me. So what I want to be able to make sure that I stress is that I didn't want partners when I first started, because most entrepreneurs have a significant amount of hubris, and I think it's very important to be confident in yourself when you are trying to be an entrepreneur, whether you're starting up a business or you're buying a company. But the reality is you don't know everything. And so if you can find what I call smart money, not just money. So we always talk about raising capital because it's something that's really important, and most of us don't have significant amounts of capital. So we're always trying to figure out, where do we go to get money? How do we get partners that can fund things? Does the bank think that my partners actually have any money? That's a really interesting one. A lot of times your potential partners will get grilled by the lenders to make sure that they have capital. But what is important to me in that transaction, and has been going on forward, is that it put people around entrepreneurs that have something other than capital to bring to the scenario. So if I go and ask somebody for $250,000 and they are doing something else and they don't have any time, but they say, yes, your average 34% return on investment is awesome and I want to give you $250,000, I won't take it. And I don't recommend that anyone else takes it. What you want is to find good partners that are going to be for you after the transaction, throughout the ownership of the business, that are going to be able to say, hey, I've got someone for you to cover this. Don't worry about it. I had a partner in my first deal that about a year after owning it, I called him up and I sounded really down. And he's like, hey, Michael, what's going on? Why do you sound so depressed? Something wrong with the business? No, but I had been up all night the night before with a very difficult personal situation that I had to deal with in my family, and it involved one of my siblings. That's about all I can tell you. And he said, let me take care of this for you because I need you to not be worried. So your problem is my problem. And I've had a very good friend that said something to me when I was younger that has always stuck with me. It's one of the important things that they go back to repeatedly in my life, is that if it's important to you, it's important to me. So when you're looking for partners, you need people that are going to bring equity to the table, but also people that would say, if it's important to you, it's important to me. So, rules versus reality. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs. I talk to entrepreneurs almost every morning, maybe twice a day. I meet with different people. I've met with a lot of you in this room. The problem is that I run into is that people read as much as they possibly can. They educate themselves as much as they can. They network as much as they can. They do all of the right things, and then believe that they understand, based upon the rules that they've learned, that they know exactly how it's going to work. And you walk into a bank, and you sit down with someone like Kylie, and you say, here it is, give me what I want. And like I said to start, every single situation is different. Banks are interested in making sure that they can get paid back. So all of the things that you learn about multiples, the things that you learn about fixed charge coverages, the things that you learn about generating revenue, none of that really matters to a bank if you can't fill out a cash flow sheet. Cash flow is king, as Kylie said. I will say it also. You must be able to go into a bank on your first meeting and explain to them that you understand what cash flow is. And it's not reading an income statement, it's not reading a balance sheet. It's understanding what your debt structure looks like, what your fixed charges are, and that you can pay them back. So if you can convince a bank that this is a no-brainer, that's how you're going to get lending. It's very, very important. It's the one thing that I want to make sure that I stress to everyone in this room, is that don't come to any investor or any bank unless you can explain cash flow. And I want to also kind of jump on something that Kylie just said, which is you should be able to write your own presentation just like you see from a broker or you see from an investment banker. You should be able to start from scratch and know enough about that business before you go into a lender that you can write the book yourself. If you can do those things, all the banks are going to fall all over you. That's the most important part.
Great.
No, we have 20 minutes. We may go a couple minutes late. That's okay though. We're the last session, right? So what did I say? I need cash. Where do I look to find money, right? And so my story is a little bit different. I worked for big companies for many years, running operations around the world, and there was a Jerry Maguire moment in my life that said, I'm done. I'm going to do something on my own, more entrepreneurial, quit my job, spent a year looking for a company, found Feedall Automation, and then I said, well, how am I going to buy this business, right? You should have thought of that before I quit my job. So yeah, and so my story is a little different, and I also said, I am so nervous that I don't want to take out other investors along. I'll take a bank along, but I don't want to take any other investors along. And so I said, I'm going to do this on my own. Kylie's like, you're crazy. Why do you not like other equity investors? But so we got the deal done. So I'll just say a couple things. One is I am inspired by this Cleveland group of people, how helpful they are. This group that you see here, I mean, it's just inspiring. I come back every year. I just am inspired by the level of support and help that we get here. This is not the same in other cities. Believe me, I know other people in other cities. It's very inspiring. And so the success I had is because of people like you, and it's been specifically because of people like Kylie. My number one item of support was you need a really good banker, you need a really good accountant service, and then you need a really good lawyer. I said, if I have those three, then I should be okay. And then you need a really good wife. I'll talk about that here in a second. So what am I going to say here? Oh, so I was going to talk about my debt journey. So I try to cover up too many numbers here, but so you guys don't see my financials. So my wife and I bought our first business, and she's not involved, but she's involved because she's on the hook with the personal guarantee. But we bought our first business in 2017, Feedall Automation. I said, how are we going to buy it? We bought it with a really great presentation. I would never go to a banker without a presentation. I was always going to board meetings. If I showed up at a board meeting without a presentation and able to articulate why I wanted something, I would be walked out of the board meeting. So that's the approach I used with securing finances. I went to 7 banks, 3 of which said, we'll fund you. Kylie funded me with bank debt, and we had a seller note on top of that, which I didn't really understand that's seen as equity. And so we did that in 2017. A year later, bought another business called Linden. Let's see here. Does this thing? The pointer doesn't work. I bought a business in Linden. Was another business I bought on my own. Got financing, seller note. No seller note on that one, but just debt financing. And then I paid off the seller note in 2020 off the first business. Decided to buy the building on the second business. And so I slowly started paying down debt. And then last year I said, I'm going to buy this other add-on business called RoboShop for Feedall. Debt went back up. I needed another building, purchased another building. And so my lesson here is you need a good banker, because it's not like a one and done transaction. You need support, you need credibility in the marketplace with bankers. And I can't tell you how many times Kylie and I are on the phone to say, hey, how do I structure this deal? I'm thinking about this. And she gives me advice on how to do it. So this slide is really to tell you that a banking relationship is so critical to the success of any entrepreneur and anyone that wants to buy a business, and that it doesn't end. Oh, and then here's what my wife said, like literally 12 months ago. She goes, where is the cash? It's been 8 years. It keeps on going the other way. I haven't figured out an answer to that question yet, but it should pay off, right? And so, so this is a lesson for anyone that's wanting to do it. Business owners aren't rich people, at least I'm not. I mean, we work hard and we put into work, and I said, someday, maybe I will have someone that wants to buy my businesses. So, but my takeaways here is you never have enough cash in these businesses. Cash flow statement that Michael says, I look at it every week. We have a weekly cash flow. How's the cash flowing in the business? I run these small businesses like a large corporation, meaning that we're very disciplined, but we're very quick. We can make very quick decisions, but we're very disciplined with the financials. We're instilling the right processes and people and systems. And the other thing is, you can't ignore the fact that you're going to say, hey, Kylie, I'm going to grow this business 10% per year and not need cash to do it. I got taught this in business school once. He says growth takes cash, and there's a nice paper on it. Literally, I could probably write the paper. we grew both these businesses. The amount of cash it takes to fund inventory, fund receivables with bigger customers, to fund new buildings, to fund hiring people. There's a lot of cash that you need to grow a business. And the last point, like I continue to say, is having a really good banker that you can depend on for open, honest answers is really important, because you're not going to end that relationship after that first transaction. So how do we do? So, you did great. 12:04. So we wanted to save time for questions and answers.
I want to make a point to what John was saying with you need cash to grow a business. So this is one of the reasons that I think this whole symposium makes a lot of sense. You have to understand that when you're buying a business, there's already cash flow, or there should be if you're buying a reasonably good business, which is substantially different from starting a company from scratch. That's kind of the basic idea of buying a business, doing ETA, versus starting a company, because you have to have cash. And the only way you're getting it in a startup is if you convince Uncle Vinny to give you a big pile of cash. So when you're buying a company, it comes with cash flow. That's why you need to make sure that you're careful about your working capital. If you screw up the working capital portion of your purchase agreement and give away your receivables, this is something that oftentimes happens, and that's a huge problem, because that's one of the reasons that you're buying a company that already exists. It's because you're buying it at a certain point in time.
I want to let you know this. Can you turn me on? Okay, I got it. This was not a Kylie show. I don't like my name, and I don't like to be up here, so it's okay. But I do want to say that through the journey of being a banker, I pretty much interviewed every head of credit, because I really know what you guys go through, because one day I will be you. I somehow figured out. Aaron's yelling at me now, like, why can't I just go buy a business? My sister and I live together. But to find somebody like Brad, who we all know where he's sitting right now, and his experience and his background and being the president of a bank is why I work where I work. And that allows us as a team to understand what our needs are. 30% of my job is working with those entrepreneurs we're all training. They all come in like, can I do 5% cash or 10% cash? It ends up being like 30 to 40% equity between seller notes and everything else in. And you do not want to walk into John's growth and his growth and not have anything. We'll keep getting your line of credit up as much as we can, but John doesn't have the backers, but when Michael needed, he could always go, I need money. And Nate is going to grow huge. So he'll always need to call in his investors. So I know this wasn't a question and answer, but I was doing it with you, I guess, Michael. So go ahead. Does anybody have a question?
Who has questions?
It shows that we didn't do a good job if you don't have questions, so just make one up.
Come on, pink jacket.
Pink jacket?
To how your line of credit or working capital needs changed along with during your journey as your debt requirements just to buy a building, finance a business. What about working capital with the bank, line of credit, revolving credit, that type of thing, with your banker along the way?
Yes. Yes is the answer. You continue to need a really healthy line of credit. And you just got to balance that with, your cash flow needs. And so I've asked for extensions in lines of credit, and I think I did one last month. And when you need it, you need a good banker to understand your business pretty quickly and have it funded. So yeah, line of credit is equally as important as kind of the upfront structure of the long-term debt of the deal. Good question.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you. So when you purchased these businesses, at what point, you both mentioned different periods where you were kind of panicking and stressed out and freaking out. At what point did you have reasonable confidence that everything was going to be okay?
Never. I haven't reached that point yet, so I'll tell you, come back next year. Maybe I'll be at that point. Michael probably has. He sold one of his businesses.
I think, the day after the wire transfer went through and I had sold my business, I think that was the day. I have, in other versions of my speeches, I say that to me, being an entrepreneur is waking up every single morning knowing that you're going to get punched in the gut. And if you aren't interested in that, then it's not for you. It's pretty much bad news all the time, and when there's good news, it's celebratory. So I think it's perpetually nerve-wracking for me, but I work better under pressure. That's just the way that I'm wired. So it works for me. It doesn't work for everyone because it is a very, very stressful thing to do. People are always looking to you to answer the questions. They're always looking to you to provide them some relief. I'm sure John has plenty of stories, as do probably most of you in this room, about when COVID happened, my employees were looking to me to answer the question as if I had ever been through anything like it before. And they need a parental figure to say, everything's going to be okay. You're still going to get your paycheck. And there was periods of time where I had no idea if that was true. It ended up being true, but to say that it's not a stressful place to be would be a complete fabrication.
But having good advisors around you make a difference, because I know like John works for Mead & More, this phenomenal sponsor here, and they keep each other honest. John challenges them on the valuation, and then it comes back even better. But I mean I think good advisors like you work with Ben Cook, he's always making it sane, but he protects you, and you have everybody.
Yeah, I think that when you're looking for advisors, that's a really good point, Kylie, is that you should be looking for people that are advising you and not just transactional. So there are many accounting firms and legal firms and consulting firms that will help you do any number of things, but you need to look for individual people that work at those places that see themselves as an advisor. So I can go to many different banks, but Kylie is an advisor. So Kylie in particular is important to me. When PPP stuff was happening, I think John and I were both on the phone with Kylie at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to deal with making sure that we got our PPP money. So I think when you're searching for advisors, you need to find those people that are really, truly interested in your success. Larry.
All right, Larry, I'll bring you your little baton.
So for both of you, since you've run businesses before, can you talk about some of the operational challenges that you've had within your businesses? Be as specific as you can, and then what you've done or what your team has done, how you've led through some of those operational challenges to overcome those.
Yeah, I'll be really simple. I had a water jet operator. A water jet cuts steel, flat steel. He was making weapons and selling them on Facebook. So I say that because there's no limit to the operational challenges you'll have in any of these businesses.
So the first business I ever bought, I walked in my very first day. I didn't even have an office yet. I was going to walk in and use my key for the first time. And standing in the driveway or the parking lot is the head of purchasing, and he says to me, I took a trip to India and I've tested positive for tuberculosis. So I'm going to be gone for the next 3 months. Congratulations on buying business. This is a key employee. And I think we could talk about this for hours, but I think the number one issue, if I was to say, all right, where is it weighted to the problems? You have some operational inefficiencies, or you have freight problems, or you have cash flow issues. Human resources in these small businesses is the number one difficulty. It's good and it's bad, but it's the number one thing, because we don't have, generally, maybe you're lucky enough, but I don't have any businesses that I'm involved in that has a human resources manager. We're it, right? So I would say the best answer to your question in a short version is anything that has to do with people is the hardest thing.
Yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up here. Are you going to do the wrap up? Yeah, okay.
Let's give it a round of applause. I'm glad you guys didn't have to do that with a car alarm going in the background. Again, a congratulations and thank you to our speakers for this excellent panel. We do have a sponsor today. You guys might have heard of the Effective Leadership Academy. So on behalf of the contributions of our speakers and our sponsors, we have donated $2,500 to Effective Leadership Academy. So you'll hear more about them later today, but we have a gift for all of our speakers, and we'll just, again, give them a round of applause. Off to lunch. Thanks.